Hey guys, welcome to another 2D Unity tutorial. Um, Today we're talking about death, because that's like the last main topic that I think we really need to talk about. Um, Here's the list of things that I believed a platformer should have that some people may recognize from the first of these like platforming tutorials. We've got a player, got collectibles. You guys can read. The only things we have left are enemies, obstacles, and UI. I'm dropping the plot concept because we now have a world building officer, which means it's no longer my problem. Um, that is sarcastic. But also, if we have someone who's been elected as being more qualified in that topic, I feel like they should be the person to explain all that. So, enemies, obstacles, and UI is the last thing that we're going to discuss. So let's get right into that. Here is what the game looked like as of the last meeting. I know that I rushed the end kind of a lot because I ran out of time, but uh, as you can see, we've got this like uh, setup where like the background is physically behind the player, and because of that, when we do this, we got like this fun background and we've got animation, so that all looks nice, but the player can't die yet. And I believe one of the first things Rain did in the 3D tutorials was like, hey, we can fall off the edge now and die. And I pointed out, you can't die, so let's add that in. Um, so we're going to add a 2D object, and it's going to be a square. And it's going to be centered, and it's going to be at like -6. That'll work. And it has this sprite render here. I don't want it to have a sprite. No, I don't want to look at the sprite. I want to remove component. So we can't see it, but it still exists. And I'm going to give it a collider. So it has a collider, but it doesn't show up. And I'm going to edit the collider so we can see the edges of it. And I want it to be stupid wide and about that tall. Actually, it needs to be wider. So it this is going to be our zone of death. And basically, it's just going to be this small thing here at the bottom. And if the player crashes into it, I want them to respawn. And I already have this respawn right here. It's at the dead center of the map. And it's here. It's tagged respawn. And it's literally, as it says, it's just an empty game object where I want the player to respawn. So we've got this zone of death. I want it to be tagged death. I'm going to use this death tag just to mean something that when the player bumps into it, it would kill the player or it should reset the player. So, that should work because we've got a collider. So now we're going to mess with the player movement script. And not now. As you can see, I went through and I documented this, and I'm gonna update the GitHub with this documented version. And it just kind of has basic one-line comments about what exactly I'm doing where. And we have this public game object respawn. That is going to be a game object that has the transform of where we respawn. In some games you might like have like, oh, it's a fancy like pedestal that the player respawns on, or it can just be literally nothing and just a dot in space. Whichever works for you. And then down here we've got on trigger enter. And as some of you might know, as hopefully everyone knows now, We take in a game object or the collider of a game object, and we're going to check the tag of that game object to figure out what it is. And if it's tag death, I want it to print out that it's going to respawn, and then I want the transform of the player. Remember, if we don't specify what the game object is for the transform, then it defaults to whatever the script was added to. And I want the position to equal the position of the respawn. And that is hopefully very simple to understand. Does this all make sense so far?
So I just want to clarify. So essentially you had like a sprite called Respawn, and you had one that was Zone of Death, and the Zone of Death, of course, had the box collider. Did Respawn have anything on it?
So instead of me making a sprite, Unity has this thing called create empty. Sometimes empty game objects are used for storage. Like I have an empty game object coins, and in that I have all of my coin objects, and that's just to make things look nicer over here. But it also can be used just to store a point on the map. So I am using it to store the origin 000, and that is all that it has. And I use that because I want to have the position 000 marked, and it's easier for me to think of it as I'm getting the transform from somewhere. You could also just pass in the coordinate 000. Whatever works for you. Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? I know that I talk fast, and that might be annoying.
That's good. I don't have any.
Okay. With all that out of the way, the zone of death is tagged death, respawn is tagged respawn. Let's die, shall we? So, oh, that's weird. If we don't, oh, okay. One thing that I should say is this player movement script is very buggy. I haven't like done a lot to bug test it. Like I haven't done a lot to fix it. I can go over that real quick. But the zone of death is trigger. And also you might notice that we reached the edge of the background. That's because the background image is like incorrectly placed or something like that. But as you can see, if we fall off, we die. So that's what I wanted. So we're going to unhit play. And we're going to make the background bigger, because that really bugged me. Now that should be more than enough. And I'm going to go back into the player movement script. And one thing that we can do, and this might be overkill, but it's bugging me. Void on collision exit, or not on collision, on trigger. No, it's going to be on collision. Exit 2D. And this is literally just the opposite of it's the opposite of on collision enter. So when we stop hitting the ground, well, I don't want to set is falling to true. This set is grounded to false. And then that should trigger the falling, I believe. Because the problem is that will also trigger if we jump. So if we jump, that still works fine. And then if I run off the edge, it jumps and falls. And I'm fine that the player auto jumps when it falls. If you wanted to mess more with that, you could. I personally, I think that's fine.
Wait, can you show that again? So you use the on collision and exit?
Yes. So if we stopped hitting the ground, is grounded as false. It's the same thing as going on here, except it says is grounded to false. And then if we go to the jump method that I wrote here, since is grounded is false, and I believe is falling is default set off, what it's going to do is it's going to do the same thing as if we jumped. So it's going to start doing this. And it treats it the same as if we just jumped. Because the previous problem was that if I just ran off the ground instead of jumping, the player would only move according to the gravity of this. And that wasn't how I wanted the player to move, so I used the script to change how gravity worked on it. I believe you could just like mess with the gravity scale and have like the jumping button just apply a force up. But I don't really know how to do that, and I did find a way that works for me. I do encourage everyone here that if there is something that I do that I'm satisfied with the result with and you aren't, please go ahead and mess with it on your own time, and maybe you'll figure out like, hey, this is like kind of different enough, and maybe I have a concept for a game based around like this weird glitch. And that is how I've seen a lot of like these basic platformers come about, is like someone noticed a glitch in like a platformer or like in a script and built their game around that. Right. So now we can die. And it would be really easy to make any of these kill you. Like, let's say this one coin is bad. So I'm going to tag it death, and I'm going to give it a different sprite. Ooh, this is a... Ooh, I want that coin. I'm going to give it... we have this here, which is its sprite render. It's a bad coin. Ooh. Oh, that didn't work. It kills you, and it makes you respawn. But it just kind of looks bad. But that is how you would, like, make an object that kills you. It's just make a sprite, tag it death, now it makes you respawn. Let's say, if we wanted to have lives, that's really simple. If we tag into it, if we bump into something, lives minus equal 1, and then right here we're going to make an int lives equals 3, and then here if lives is equal to 0. Oh, that goes here. And then just take that same thing for the respawn. So transform dot position equals respawn dot transform dot position. And that should give us lives, I believe. Oh, but that won't work because you know what, I'm just gonna make a square real quick to be our thing that kills you. Or maybe it'll be this thing, because that looks evil. And this is tagged death. And it has an edge collider. Does that work? That'll work. Is trigger. And 1, 2, 3. Now it makes you respawn. Oh, that's weird. Aren't we falling? Why can't we jump?
I think it's because you're still at 0. You got to reset the number of lives.
You're right. Thank you for catching that. But as you can see, it's incredibly easy to implement this, and 1, 2, 3, a respawn, a new number of lives, and as I went over before, you can easily add in, this has a nice sprite, and it goes through an animation maybe, or maybe it's just like a you can go through and make it look nicer than just this weird diamond thing. Actually, and just like we have the player movement here, where it moves left and right, it would be incredibly easy just to have it move left for a number of seconds, like the way that we did the max jump time combined with this. It's incredibly easy to have it move left and right over and over again, and then it looks like an enemy. And you can have it have different animations. Like, you can take this above and beyond what I'm showing you, and I encourage you to do so. This is, as I have said before, the bare minimum. And one thing I'd like to add right now, so we've got this. This is what the menu overlay is going to look like. I would like this text to say lives. And I want that to be up here. And I want it to be a nicer color. That's for sure. That is hard to see. Color, bright red. And I want its size to be like huge. So we've got that, and this text is lives text. And then we've also got another text, and this is also going to be, it says 3, it's 36 and red. It'll be like a different shade of red so you can see it. A more obvious different shade of red. And you can line that up better. And this text is going to be lives number. And what I want to do is I want to have it display the number of lives that I have left. So we're going to have a public text lives num. And again, I'll show you my process of like how I do this. So Unity text, and I can set text, I believe, by hello.
There he is.
There's gotta be something here that I can use to change the text. Yeah. So here, so there, and now when it collides with death, or maybe just at the end of every, no. I only wanted to update this when it's changing it, because otherwise it's calling it once per frame, and I want to encourage good habits, such as not calling everything once per frame. So lives num dot text equals lives. I'm doing this in a kind of cheaty way because if I just have it be lives, it'll say like, oh, you can't just change it to an int, but this way it recognizes it as a string. Yeah. And then I also wanted to reset it if we died. And let's see if this works. No. Okay.
Is it because you didn't set up the text object for the script? It's like if you go to the better player.
UI, no, it is a text. Maybe there's something that we have to import.
Isn't it like whenever you add a public object, like a public text or
Oh,
something
yeah,
like
that might
that,
be
you have
it.
to go back to the script and you have to like actually assign it?
Yeah, that is true. So definitely gonna do that. Um, no, see, this error here means that it doesn't know what a text is. So there's an import statement that we're missing. So Unity text import.
Try going back to the last one, or yeah, just the API.
All right, it looks like it's this. So I'm gonna. Looks like it's unityengine.ui. Now let's see if it compiles. No. Okay.
I think you forgot the semicolon.
Yeah, you missed the semicolon.
Oh, thanks for catching that, because I didn't, evidently. Okay. And now that it exists, we can drag that in, hit play. Fingers crossed. Now you see it displays in this upper left-hand corner. And if I die, lives equals 2, lives equals 1, 0, and I reset, and it works. And wow. And you can do that with coins too. It's really easy. You just add another text, and yeah. And that's really all I got. I guess I could do that real quick, just to show you that it is in fact as easy as I swear. I don't know, what color should this be? It should be yellow. I don't think I used yellow yet. I'm gonna say coins. Oh, and I want it to be big enough to see it. And I want another text. There's probably a more efficient way to do this. It's just this is what I know will work. And of course, there are ways to make every aspect of this more efficient, and I encourage you to explore Unity and to figure out what things are good and cool and make better games than this, because this is honestly a really crappy game right now. I don't think anyone would willingly play this game if not for loyalty to the club. So, are there any questions?
I don't have any.
I don't either. I feel like who knew death was that simple?
Oh yeah, death is incredibly simple.
Too deep for me.
Now, let's just make sure that didn't work. I didn't update it, right? You gotta make sure you do that. Yeah, so now we've got like a fully working game that we could technically like put on the App Store, which that was the whole goal. Ta-da! And if there are no questions, then I will stop the recording here, I guess.